It's a pleasure for me to be here with you as we celebrate Hanukkah this week. My presence at the UAE has been now slightly over a year. However, my connection with the UAE goes back over 10, 11 years ago, when a friend of mine who joined me at the Sephardic Heritage trip to Spain in 2010 and informed me that he has been doing business in the Arabic Gulf region for over 20 years. That was, as I said, 10, 11 years ago. He felt that I should meet the leaders of the UAE, the Emirati society. And so whenever any one of them came to New York, he made sure that we would meet and we would exchange ideas and opinions. Then almost 3 years ago, I visited the very small nascent Jewish community in Dubai, which was not yet officially recognized, but with the tacit approval of the government. We brought a Torah scroll in memory of Sheikh Zayed, who was the founding father of the UAE. We met with the Jewish community, as I said. We met also with the Crown Prince in his palace in Abu Dhabi. And that's where I cemented my connections and my relationship with that country. Eventually, once the Abraham Accords were signed, which I was aware that they were in the process, the Jewish community was asked to become officially registered as a community of faith and requiring a rabbi. So my name was mentioned, and I was asked, and I accepted the offer to go there. And so when I arrived there, I found the community slightly larger than what it was 3 years ago, approximately 250 people, 200 to 250 people, and began trying to build up the community. Of course, as in any new community, you have challenges, you have issues that need to be resolved. And while I'm staying there, I recognize that there are Jews in the other 6 countries of the Gulf Cooperation Council, namely Bahrain, Oman, Kuwait, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia. And together with the small community in Bahrain, small Jewish community in Bahrain that really dates back 140 years ago, that was established by Iraqi and Persian Jews who moved to Bahrain for business and for safe haven. And they established a community then. So together with the small community in Bahrain, we decided to create this Association of Gulf Jewish Communities to service Jewish communities and Jewish individuals that lived in that region and don't have Jewish services or Jewish religious rituals and things like that, because there's no community. I mean, Saudi Arabia, there are Jews in the thousands, believe it or not. However, they're not organized as a community. They're there, many of them have been there several decades working, some of them few months, and some of them several years. Jews are in Qatar also, Jews are in Kuwait, Jews are in Oman. And so I recognize together with the leadership of the community in Bahrain that we need to service those Jewish individuals with whatever they need to survive as Jews, either religious advice, communal advice, holiday paraphernalia that they need, books, Filin, so on and so forth. And that's when we established that organization in February of 2021. It has been very well received by the UAE, by Bahrain, and also by the other countries, although not officially established, not officially recognized, but of course, tacitly approved by many of those governments. And so that's where we try to help many of those Jews. For starting from Purim, we had a Megillah reading for all of them. Pesach, we had distribution of matzah, of haroset. Sukkot, before Sukkot, Rosh Hashanah, we had the distribution of honey, apples, and shofarot. And even in Sukkot, we had the distribution of lulav and etrog, all what they need, we make it available for them. So there's definitely a great importance to the establishment of a Jewish community in the UAE and in any Arab country at this moment. For me, it is like closing a circle, as I was born in an Arab country, in Lebanon, Beirut. My parents were born in Aleppo, Syria. And for generations, many of my ancestors lived there, and many of the ancestors of many Jews. As you know, approximately 1 million Jews lived in Arab countries stretching from Iraq, Iran, Iraq, all the way to Morocco, and all the countries in between. Of course, in Saudi Arabia, there were Jews living there up to like several hundreds of years ago. Certainly, even before the advent of Islam, Jews lived in many of those countries. The UAE did not exist as a country, and in that region there were no Jews, except that there was a discovery of a Hebrew tombstone in Ras Al Khaimah, which is one of the Emirates, but believed to be of a Jewish business traveler that may have died and was buried there. We don't have yet a remnant of any Jewish community in that area, but be that as it may. So the importance is really great. It is very significant to establish a Jewish community in an Arab country, because that's where we have been for thousands of years. Some of these communities, believe it or not, date back to the time of King Solomon, especially the community in Yemen. The community in Saudi Arabia dates back definitely to 2,000 years from the destruction of the Second Temple. The communities in North Africa, also many of them date back, in fact, to the First Temple. In Tunisia, definitely the community there dates back 2,500 years ago. Destruction of the First Temple. And so it is very significant to have a Jewish community, is the recognition that we have lived in that area for many, many centuries and millennia. So celebrating Mizrahi Heritage Month is of course significant, because it's part of the history of the Jewish people. A people that does not know its history is condemned to repeat it. And we certainly don't want to repeat the bad times that our people went through in their countries of origin, be that North Africa, Middle East, or even Europe and Eastern Europe. But it's a history that we all ought to learn from it. We all ought to cherish the good days and to learn not to repeat the bad days, or at least to prevent the repetition of those bad days and bad times. And so it's very significant. Now, our presence also recognizes the new reality in that region towards the state of Israel, the country, the land of the Jews, the country of the Jews. And so even though we are a religious community, not a political community, we do not represent Israel as a political entity. They have their own ambassador. However, Israel is certainly the land, the Holy Land, has been promised in the Talmud, in the Bible, of course in the Talmud, but in the Bible, even in the Quran, recognizes that the land was given to the Israelites, to Musa, to Moshe, after the 40 years of wandering in the desert. And so it is greatly significant to have a Jewish community there representing the Jewish people, and having a relationship with Israel, diplomatic relations with Israel, now not just UAE, but Bahrain, and hopefully soon with the rest of the countries in that region, is of great significance. Well, to tell you that last year I arrived a month before Hanukkah, slightly less than a month before Hanukkah, and there were two celebrations. To tell you that this year we have 8 nights, and each night has a celebration, not just by one group, but by several other groups. So we have sometimes 2-3 celebrations at the same time. It just shows you the growth of the Jewish community and the growth of and the welcoming that we feel in that country. celebrating Hanukkah every single night. And every single night there are several celebrations. Now, Hachamim, our sages, tell us, based on the verse, Kiner mitzvah veTorah or. One mitzvah, one good deed is one light. Torah is the entire spectrum of light. And so based on what we are celebrating, every good deed that we do brings more light to the world, and the light brings enlightenment to the world. So when we each one of us does a good deed, and in a sense creates a new light in this world. And if you put it together, you have a great light. In fact, our sages also say that eventually there is this Or Hadash al Sion Ta'ir, that there will be a new light over Zion, or there is a light that is specifically saved for the righteous people. And that is as a result of all the good deeds that they have done throughout their years and throughout the ages. And so definitely very significant and very important for each one of us to do a good deed in this world, so we could light up the world with goodness and goodwill, and basically being the light into the nations. We're going to have a celebration together with the museum called the Crossroad of Civilizations Museum. It is led by a very dear friend of mine, Sheikh Ahmad Al-Mansouri. His institution is the first institution in an Arab country that commemorated the Holocaust, that has a permanent exhibit on the Holocaust, and that is using the museum to teach the population everything about Judaism and the Jewish people. So it is definitely a historic moment. It's an institute that has taken upon itself to spread education to not just that population, but to the entire region, about Jews, the Jewish people, about the Holocaust, and about the history of the Jews, including the establishment of the State of Israel. And so it is very significant that we are celebrating Hanukkah in that museum together with that museum and its leader. Let me extend my greeting of Hanukkah Sameach. May the light of the Hanukkah enlighten your lives, your endeavors, and all what you do to enlighten this entire world.
Vesivannu,